Shavua Tov. I hope you had a lovely Shabbat. Okay, tonight's teaching is one that I'm particularly excited about. But I want to issue a warning. And I try not to teach anything that I have to start by issuing a warning. But I do tonight. And the warning is that this is going to be the longest text that we've learned. But when I first came across this on Shabbat, I believe it'll be well worth it. So not only is the text we're going to learn tonight lengthier than usual, but it also has some deep concepts and ideas, which frankly I'm still processing. So I'm excited to share it with you. It's going to take us in all kinds of different interesting directions. I'm starting with a verse from our Torah portion going into Havdalah, and then the question about the power that we have here on earth in connection with the power that God's presence has, all that fills the world. So there's your warning, and if we're ready, let's begin. Shalom Yochev. Shavua Tov. All right, everybody. In our Torah portion, it begins with this verse. This is chapter 47, verse 24. If you want to follow along in your Chumash, hello, Elaine. That's my mom and Steve in Florida. Hello, Shavua Tov. Okay, I've issued my warning, and we're going to jump into the text now. Ready? Here we go. Uva ofen acher yivoar. Unatatem chamishit lefaro ba'arba hayadot yeh lachem la'ochla la'asher bevatechem. So the verse is Joseph making a deal with those who have come to Egypt looking for food. Specifically, these are actually the local Egyptians, and they need food. And he says, okay, I'm going to give you food, but this is the deal. You're going to give 1/5 of your earnings to Pharaoh, and 4/5 you get to keep in your house for yourselves to eat. Where are we going to go with this verse? You ready? Dehine amru b'mishne librachot. He says, we learn in the Mishnah in Brachot, in Perek Elu Devarim, Beit Shammai Omrim, Beit Shammai says that when we say the blessing over the fire for Havdalah, we should say this, Shebara me'or ha'esh. Blessed are you, God, who created the light of fire. Beit Hillel Omrim, Beit Hillel says, Borei me'orei ha'esh, God who creates the light of fire. Beit Shammai svira lahu deyesh lomar shebara demashma lisha'avar shekvar bara me'or ha'esh. And Beit Shammai, they believe that it's more fitting to say created, that is to say in the past tense, for already the light of fire was created. Beit Hillel svira lahu, and Beit Hillel, they believe the yesh lamar bore, that we should say bore, creating. Yesh lahavin da amai la plige. Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel bebirkat haneanin. And he says, and so Beit Hillel says that we should say it in the present tense. Blessed are you, God, who creates the light of fire. This, by the way, is what we say during Havdalah. We say bore me'orei ha'ish, not bara, not God who created fire. Now listen to this question. This is one of the greatest questions I've ever come across. It says, Yesh lahavi, va'amai la plige Beit Shammai Beit Hillel bebirkat hanehanim. Why don't Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai disagree about other blessings of pleasure? That is to say, like borei minei mizonot, borei peri hagafen, borei peri ha'etz. And when we say all of our other blessings, we say, blessed are you, God, who creates the fruit of the vine. Blessed are you, God, who creates the fruit of trees. Why, he says, Why doesn't Beit Shammai disagree with those blessings? Why doesn't Beit Shammai say even for those blessings we should say in the past tense? Why is it only this blessing of fire for Havdalah that Beit Shammai says we should say God who created it? And Beit Hillel says, no, we need to say it in the present tense. Why don't they disagree about the other blessings? Dila Beit Shammai, Haya lo lomar b'chol habrachot shebara. Beit Shammai should have said with all of the brachot, shebara, God who created, in the past tense. V'lama amru Beit Shammai rak gabe Havdalah, v'yesh lomar shebara. Why only with Havdalah does Beit Shammai say to do it in the past tense, shebara? V'lo bishar brachot, but not with the other blessings. V'efshar lomar debishlama gabe borei minei mezonot, o borei pri hagafen kahagavna, du tamid bria bidei shamayim. And it's possible that for blessings like borei minei mezonot, over wheat, or borei pri hagafen, over wine, that one could say that these are always created by the hands of heaven. Modu Beit Shammai, the yesh lamar borei, v'lo shebara kvar. And so Beit Shammai would say that we say borei, God who creates, and not bara in the past tense. The devar shehu b'dei shamayim shayach shapir lomar borei, because things that are created by the hands of heaven, it's better to say borei in the present tense, being created now. Lashon hoba in the present tense. And he'll explain why in a second. Shehashem yitzbarach mechadesh betuvo b'chol yom tamid ba'aseh bereshit. Because we say every day that God renews in God's goodness the works of creation. V'shayach lomar borei. And so we should say borei. We should say creates. Sheborei tamid, because God is constantly creating. Masha ein ken gabe Havdalah. This is not the case with Havdalah. He's explaining why Beit Shammai might say to do it in the past tense. Severe, and after we go through this, I'll summarize this part. Severe lahu Beit Shammai. So Beit Shammai holds the yesh lomar shebarama or ha'esh, that one should say that the God who created the light of fire, the ha'ita b'midrash, as we see in a midrash in the Talmud Pesachim, page 54, in B'motzei Shabbat, we learn that on Saturday night, after Shabbat went out, Chanan HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chochma Uvina LaAdam HaRishon, God gave the first human being wisdom, V'natal Shnei Avanim, and gave them two rocks, V'hikishan Zebazeh, to smash together, V'yatza or Mibenehem, and light came from them. V'zeh Hu Bria Bidei Adam. So then we see that fire is a creation of man, not a creation of God. Shenatan HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chochma Uvina V'da'at LaAdam B'motzei Shabbat, is God who gave human beings the knowledge to do this in this story after Shabbat. V'hotzi et ha'or bibenehem. They created light in and of them, like from themselves. Biben shtei avanim, from these two rocks. V'shayach shapir lomar b'zeh shebaran. So that's why Beit Shammai says that we should say it in the past tense. This shebara mashma kvar, because when we say created, it's something that already happened. Hainush kvar bara ta'or, because light was already created. Aval achshav havai bidei adam, but now it's in the present. Presently, fire is already in the realm of man. It's already in our hands. Shonatan HaKadosh Baruch Hu sechel adam, hainu mizman habriya ve'elech, because God gave human beings the wisdom to make fire all the way back then. And since then, we've had fire. And so we should say with Havdalah, bara, God who created it. Masha ein ken b'birkat hanehani, not with other blessings, borei pri ha'etz kaduma, like blessed are you, God, who creates the fruit of trees. Shehu bria b'dei shamayim, because this is a creation by the hands of heaven. Modu Beit Shammai. Damrinan borei. That's why Beit Shammai says we should say borei, God who creates. Lashon hoba. Shehashem yitzbarach mechadesh betuvo b'chol yom tamid maseh bereshit. Because God, in God's goodness, continues to create in this world. Shapir shayach lomar bazeh borei. And so that's why we say borei for those. Uleterut zeh, and this answer, Irani bani, I teach you, my son, from Harav Hagadol Morenu Meir Neru Yair. For my teacher, Meir, may his light shine. Okay, that was just the first answer, by the way. So to sum up, answer number one, he gets from his teacher, Meir. Why is it that Beit Hillel says for Havdalah, we should say in the present tense, and Beit Shammai says we should say it in the past tense? This is because Beit Shammai, according to his teacher, Meir, and we'll talk about him in a second, Beit Shammai makes a distinction between those things which are created from heaven, the fruit of trees, grapes from a vine, wheat from the ground, and those things which were created by the hands of human beings, that is to say, fire. And who is his teacher, Meir? So I was wondering that. There's not any leading famous Hasidic rabbis who have, who lived at the same time or earlier than the Kedusha Levi, whose name is Meir, except possibly this guy. So his name might have been Meir of, let's see if I can say it, Peramishliania. Oh boy, I cannot speak Polish. But there apparently the Baal Shem Tov had a student whose name was Meir of Peramshiliana, and he was not a famous Hasidic leader in and of himself. His grandson Meir ben Aharon Lieb of Peramshiliana was a well-known Hasidic leader, though we don't have currently. We have some books, but he's not he's not one of our main key Hasidic rabbis. So it's kind of fun to see the Kedusha Levi give some kavod to this teacher, his teacher Meir, a student of the Baal Shem Tov. By the way, this Meir, we don't have any of his books, though to me this is a great example of some of the depth of Judaism that we lost during the Shoah, during the Holocaust, because there were Yiddish copies of the students of this guy Meir, who took down his notes from his shiurim, and a lot of those are lost. I know that because it mentions it here in the Encyclopedia Judaica. So Meir of Peramishliana, that's who this teaching comes from. Okay, Emilio, Shavua Tov. Okay, now we're going to get to the real deep stuff here. That was one answer. And don't forget, we still haven't talked about the Torah verse. All of this was about Havdalah. And still, remember, this is a comment on this verse from chapter 47. You should give 1/5 to Pharaoh and 4/5 you keep for yourself in your home. What does this have to do with that? That's the mystery. But that mystery is going to come to an end soon. And I warned you, this is going to be one of the most lengthy Hasidic texts we study together. But I love it because we'll get a taste for what a real kind of meaty, deep text is like. Okay, so we're gonna go deeper now. And he says, but I think, in my humble opinion, I'll try to answer this in my own way. But why is it that Beit Shammai doesn't disagree with all the other blessings, that we should say them in the past tense? He says, for all of those, say them in the present tense. One could say, the Amrinad B'kol HaBrachot Shebara. We might have said that for all of those blessings, Beit Shammai would say do it in past tense, but we don't. Dehine b'Shulchan Aruch, or Chaim Itzai says in the Shulchan Aruch, we learned this: shetzarich sheyekaven Adam ba'achilato u'shtiato, That one should intend in all of one's eating and drinking, that one is doing it in order to have the ability and the strength to know God in all of one's paths. And the Ari writes, he goes deeper and explains what do we mean. Yosef Karo in the Shulchan Aruch, when he says when you eat, you should intend to know God in all of God's ways. The Ari goes deeper, he says, and he says, "Umistama divreihem ole lekaneecha." He says, learn it like this: "Dahainu shehashem yitbarach bara ba'olamo arba bechinot." He says God created God's world with four different kinds of aspects, characteristics: domem, someach, chai, and midaber. Domem are like rocks, like silent things that are static. Someach are things that are sprouting. Think about the difference between a seed, and then when that seed is planted in the ground, it sprouts. Chai, life. Animal life and anything that lives and breeds, and then medaber, and then speech. One level up from life is intelligent life, like you and me and those. It's a miracle, by the way, that we have speech and that we can do what we're doing with words. And these are the four different aspects and characteristics, says the Ari, that God created the world. Domem, silent, static things like rocks and seeds and sticks. Someach, plant life. Chai, animal life. And medaber, speaking, which is intelligent life. The chafetz chesed, who God wishes for chesed, for kindness. Sheyeh lechol hadavarim aliyot, that everything should be raised, constantly raised up. Hainu shehadomem ya'aleh libchinat someach, that domem, silent, static things should rise to the level of sprouting, someach, like a seed, which is just a seed until you put it in the ground. That a silent thing should raise to the level of tzomeach, sprouting. Ukasheh hachai ochel hatzomeach, and when a living thing eats that sprouted thing, yesh yoter aliyah, there is now another uplifting. So now that sprouting thing is part of a life force. So not just plant life, it now becomes part of animal life. Hainu mibchinot domem or mibchinot someach libchinot chai. And so now we've raised domem and we've raised someach to the level of chai, of a living thing. But aharkach k'shehadam ochel chai. And then when a person eats something that's in the category of chai, yesh lahakol aliyah lichinat medaber, then everything is raised to the level of medaber, of speech, of intelligent life. Ayin Shem. Nimtza atei shapir debechol birchot hanehenim shayach lemeimar borei pri ha'etz or borei pri hagafen. Afil lebeit Shammai. And so this is why it's better, says the Kedushat Levi, that according to Beit Shammai, we use the present tense. God who creates the fruit of the vine, God who creates the fruit of trees. Ki borei lashon hova, because this is the present tense. Shaharei kishe adam ochel v'nehene. When a person eats and derives some benefit, azai mit alim kol hadavarim livchinot medaber. Everything is raised to that level of medaber, becomes part of intelligent life. And everything gets raised. That silent life, the plant life, the animal life, it all is raised to that level of medaber. So when a person eats, and specifically when one does this with a blessing, with this intention to be part of God's creation, then everything is made into a brand new creation. Na'asim bruim chadashim. Because they are raised to another level of creation. So the creation process is happening. It's not done being created because those things rise to a new level. Yochev, I see you are commenting, but I'm going to read a little bit more and then I'll translate your questions. And so it's better to say this in the present tense. That is to say, Borei, God who creates. Shaharei bishat ha'achila na'aseh b'riah chadasha, because at the moment of eating, these things are made into brand new creations. Shemithavchim hakol mimchinatam libchinot adam, that everything changes its original aspect to become part of the aspect of human beings, to be part of intelligent life, to be raised up to a new level of creation. Now, just to give you an example, you imagine two apples in front of you, and you choose to eat one. So you raise one up and you say, Baruch Atah Hashem Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri ha'etz, and you take a bite. Now that apple is of a different characteristic than the apple that's just sitting on the table. That apple that you've eaten, according to the Kedusha Levi, in this idea he gets from the Ari, that apple is now part of intelligent life. It has changed. Like you have changed its spiritual nature, whereas the apple on the table, still in the level of domem, a silent, static life, maybe tzomeach, plant life, but that's it. The other apple that you've blessed and you've eaten has now been raised. Shaharei mishat ha'achila na'aseh b'riah chadasha, because when we eat it, it becomes like a new creation. We read that already. V'lazeh af Beit Shammai modu, and for this even Beit Shammai agrees. B'chol habirchot hanehanim v'varchim borei peri ha'etz. For every blessing, we say, for instance, we bless God who creates the fruit of the tree. In the present tense, rak gabei havdalah. When it comes to havdalah, shehu davar she'eino nichnas leguf ha'adam. This is something which is not brought into our body. When we bless the fire for havdalah, we are looking at it. We don't ingest it. Even though we're blessing it, we are not bringing it into our body to be, raised through us to that higher level. Rak she'osim mitzvah behama or bezeh sevir leBeit Shammai, only that we do this as a mitzvah through lighting it. So Beit Shammai says, "V'lo sheyach bezeh borei." This is not creating. This is not a present tense creation. Ki eino na'aseh b'riah chadasha, because that fire isn't becoming like a new creation. Ki eino nichnas leguf ha'adam, because it doesn't enter our bodies and become part of us. Lachen svir lahu deyesh lebarech shebara. So he thinks, say it in the past tense, because it's not currently, in this moment, being created on a new spiritual plane. Ubeit Hillel Savri, but Beit Hillel says that afal pichen, even though bishat asiyat mitzvah nit ale al yado hadavar, I should say. I should emphasize that. That is to say, Beit Hillel agrees. They believe that even so, at the moment of doing the mitzvah, it is raised. The fire itself is raised by means of those words that you say. Kevan sha'asa mitzvah b'hama'or ha'esh. Because when one does the mitzvah of fire on Havdalah, nit Allah v'nit hapech libchinot adam, it becomes raised and it becomes transformed to that level of Adam, to that level of intelligent life, of Medaber. It too becomes raised. Hainu libchinat Medaber. And it too becomes like a brand new creation. And so we should say it, God who creates, in the present tense. Aval gabe birkat hanehanim gabe Shammai modu. But even for food blessings, even Beit Shammai agrees. Sheyesh lomar lashon hova, that we should say it in the present tense. that God creates the fruit of the vine, etc. Shaharei b'chol eit ha'achila shenichlas leguf ha'adam na'asetz bria chadasha. Because any time that one eats something and it enters our body, it becomes like a new creation. It rises to this higher level. V'shayach shapir bazeh daika bore. So creating is better in the present tense. Lechen shapir mevarchim bevirchat hanehanim bore priya gafen bore priya eitz v'chadoma. And so that's even why Beit Shammai says we should say those in the present tense. Okay, now if you've been following along at this point, Yasher Koach, this is pretty deep stuff. We're about to kind of get to the punchline. That goes back to the Torah verse. To sum it up, in his own estimation, the reason that we say the present tense for fruit and vegetables is because these things are currently being created new. God who creates the fruit of the vine, because its process of creation is happening now through us. Through us, these foods elevate from the level of static, silent things on earth to the level of intelligent life. And God, in God's goodness, wants to continually elevate everything around us. And we're part of that process. But fire doesn't come into our bodies. And so Beit Shammai says it doesn't become elevated to any level. And Beit Hillel says, no, you're missing it. Because, like, when you say those words, just the word itself has the power to elevate that fire from just, even though fire is not static, from quiet, unintelligent life to the level of intelligent life. But what does this have to do with the Torah verse that Joseph says to the Egyptians, you give a fifth to Pharaoh and 4 fifths you keep for yourself in your house? That's where we're at now. And then Yochel, I promise I'll translate your questions. But we're nearing the end here. And it's a great, very deep punchline. Okay. Vivo ar bezeha pasuk. And so in this, the pasuk is explained. Unatatem chamishi paro, give a fifth to Pharaoh. Arba hayado yelachem laochlam, and 4 fifths will be to you to eat. Dehine amrinan begamara brachot perak kama. And we learn in the Gemara and Brachot in the first parak, Hane Chamisha Barchi Nafshi. There's 5 psalms that begin with Barchi Nafshi. Keneged mi Amram David. So in accordance to what did David write these 5 psalms that start Barchi Nafshi? Bless, may my soul bless. And the answer in the Talmud is Keneged Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Keneged Hanashama. Those 5 things relate to God and relate to the soul. Ma hakadosh baruch hu, and these are the 5 things. Ma hakadosh baruch hu, melo kol ha'olam kulo, af hanashama mle'a kol haguf. Just as God fills the entire world, so too the soul fills the entire body. Number 2, ma shehakadosh baruch hu ro'eh ve'eno nireh, af hanashama ro'ah. Just as God sees and is not seen, so too the soul sees and is not seen. Number 3, Ma hakadosh baruch hu zan et ha'olam kulo, af hanashama zana et kol haguf. Just as God feeds the entire world, so too the soul feeds the body. Number 4, Ma hakadosh baruch hu tahor, af hanashama tahora. Just as God is pure, cannot contract impurity, so too the soul is pure. And there's a part of us that cannot become dirtied by this world. That's our soul. And number 5, Ma hakadosh baruch hu yoshev b'hadrei hadarim, af hanashama yoshev b'hadrei hadarim. Just as God sits in the room of rooms, totally hidden away, so too our soul sits deep within us in a place we can't find. Yavo misha yesh bo chamisha devarim halalu. So v'hine mavo ar bezoar kadosh, and notice how many sources he's bringing here. It's pretty amazing. So he says, and then we learn in the Zohar, he says, Oraita satim v'galia v'kadosh baruch hu satim v'galia. He says, he brings us from the Zohar. He says, Torah is hidden and revealed. God is hidden and revealed. Vahina. And so now he's going to connect these two things. What does this have to do with our verse? Vahine. Ha'arba divarim hem stumim. Those four things. There are four things in that list of five that are hidden. Hainu, these are that God is ro'eh be'eno nir'eh. God sees but is not seen. That God zan kol ha'olam kulo, but that God feeds the entire world. That God is tahor, and God sits in rooms of rooms. These are four things that are completely hidden. Rak ma shehakadosh baruch hu below kol ha'olam kulo. But the fact that God fills the entire world, zen nikra galia. This is one thing out of those five. One thing out of those five that is revealed. Shemalo kol haaretz kevodo, for the entire world is filled with God. So in the Zohar, we learn that there are parts of God that are hidden and parts of God that are revealed. And he says we learn from Brachot that there are actually four parts of God that are hidden and one part that's revealed. You can maybe see where we're going with this. V'zeu haperush, and this is the explanation of the Torah verse. When tatem chamishit leparo, give 1/5 to Pharaoh. That is to say, shachamishit hu shahakadosh baruch hu malo kol haaretz kevodo. That 1/5 that we're talking about is this fact that God fills the entire world. Zen nikra galia, and this is called revealed. V'zehu lefaro. This is what we mean with to Pharaoh. Hainu hitgalut. This is something that is revealed. We'll explain this in a second. But arba hayadot yelachem, and four of these parts should be to you. Shehu satum. These are hidden things. Those four hidden things. She'arba hu satum. What do we mean by this? Because when you have these, like when you take all of your grain, these Egyptians, and they have to take 1/5 to Pharaoh, that is to say, that fifth of that grain becomes revealed, so to speak. They have to take it out of their house and bring it somewhere. Everybody sees it. Pharaoh sees it. But four of those five things remain behind closed doors, in their silos, hidden. So we'll finish this teaching, then we'll say, what do we actually learn from this? V'zehu, arba hayadot yelachem shehu satum. Four of these parts should be for you. That is to say, hidden. V'hamishit lefaro shehu itzgalia, and that fifth to Pharaoh, this is revealed. V'yachol lehiyot shehachamishit hu hey, and it's possible to say that hachamishit, that word, that fifth, hu hey, it's represented by the letter hey. Hey is 5 in gematria. Hey is also the first word of ha-chamishit. V'hu hey achrona shebeshem havaya. This is the last hey in God's name. Yud hey vav hey. Baruch hu. V'yadua hey achrona hu alma de'itzgai. And that last hey represents the revealed world. There's an idea that God creates through the letters, and especially through the letters of God's name. Yud hey vav hey. That last hey representing revealed creation. Okay, so this verse that Joseph says to the Egyptians, 1/5 you should give to Pharaoh and 4/5 you should keep for yourselves, comes to teach. It's a code almost. The Kiddush HaLevi sees this as Joseph teaching us that there is 1/5 of those 5 things we learn in Brachot, one part of God that is constantly around us, revealed in the world, and 4/5 that are not. Now, if you think that's a stretch to this Torah verse, I'll grant you that. But the read is very creative, because indeed, if you take these 5 parts, one of them is revealed, and 4 of them are hidden. And so this is the Torah speaking in code to say that there is one part of God that is constantly revealed in the world. And how does that relate to Havdalah? Because when it comes to that fire that we say, Borei Meorei Ha'esh, God who creates fire, and this, to say that that fire is raised to the level of a new creation, Beit Shammai, remember, said, but there's no ingestion. There's no, you don't take in that fire to yourself, and then it can be elevated through you. Well, The answer, the Kedusha Levi would say, is that even though you don't take in that fire, God's the presence fills the earth. And when you say those words, doing that mitzvah, it is in some spiritual way taken in a deep sense to that presence of God that fills the earth and elevated through that. Just as our neshama has the power to take food, the things that are domem, someach, and chai, and elevate them to the level of intelligent life, so too God's presence that fills the world. We don't, even though it's all around us, there are only some times when we come very close to it. Just like there's one apple, that in our example from before, that we take in, and it rises to the level of Adam. So too, there are some things that are taken into God's presence and are elevated through it, and there are some things that aren't. And when we do Havdalah, when we say the blessing over the fire, it's taken into that presence of God that is all around us, ingested, so to speak, through that, and becomes elevated. So even though it doesn't enter our body, there is still a living power. Call it Shekhinah, call it the presence of God all around us, and the fire is taken into that and elevated through the power of that last fifth, that revealed part of God in the world. Whoa! Okay, I warned you. It was going to be quite the night tonight. So much to take in this teaching. And we even learned about a forgotten sage, mayor of Paramilius. Okay, we're going to say it. We're going to say it right. No, we're not. We lost the bookmark. Well, mayor of Permilshilnyana, I think, a disciple of the Baal Shem Tov, who he attributes that first explanation to. Okay, Yochev, you've been waiting very patiently, writing in Portuguese, and I will now translate it. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, now is the time to share them in the chat. Okay, hold on. Okay, Yochev, I'm writing like, okay. The first thing you said is, until now you didn't know there was a difference in the verb tenses using the blessings. Thanks for the instruction. Yes, there's a difference in the Mishnah. Remember, Beit Shammai says specifically for Havdalah, we should say it in the past tense. But all of these blessings have Borei, God who creates. Yochev says, we are compared as plants and their growth stages. However, the finer process is medaber, speech. Yes, a sign of intelligence. It is. I mean, there is a sense that intelligent life is of a higher quality, than plant life, and then that's of a higher quality than domem, than of silent, unstatic things. Whether we like to admit it or not, there is a real sense of a hierarchy in terms of life and consciousness. Yochid, you also say, what a great opportunity to be part of the creation process. Yeah, that's a great lesson from this teaching. And why we say Bore, that God continues to create in the world through us. Beautiful teaching. From the issuance of a blessing, we raise all food to spiritual levels. Yes, that's right. Blessed is God that allows us this society. Yeah, blessed is God that allows us this partnership. Then you say, thanks to the depth that the action of turning on the Shabbat lights is capable of causing. Yes. And then you say that we continue to do mitzvot and blessings with joy so that everything is elevated. Amen. Yes. Yeah. Borei me'orei ha'ish, says Lisa Richards. Okay. Thank you for sticking around for what was our longest Hasidic text yet, and our most complicated, and one, I think, of the most profound. Everything we do has to be elevated. I wonder, Lisa, what you mean by that, because there are things we do that are not elevated per se, but it has the power to be. And because we have that responsibility of being intelligent life. So in some ways, Lisa, you're not wrong to say that everything we do is elevated because it comes from the space of intelligent life. But I would even add to what you're saying, Lisa, is that everything we do has the power to be elevating. That we as human beings, as the keepers of medaber, of speech, of intelligent life, have the power to lift up the world around us. Okay, and then my mom says, wonderful class tonight. Thank you, Mom. Okay, I think we'll end with that. As always, you can email me. I was told that my email address I put last time in the chat didn't go through. I just tried it again, but it's Rotenberg@SinaiTemple.org. Feel free to reach out. I look forward to more learning, more praying, more studying with you soon. Shavua Tov, everybody. And thank you, Yochev, for that comment from today. See you next time. Shavua Tov. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Yochev. Thank you, my mom, Elaine, and Steve, and Maria, and Emilio. See you next time. Shavua Tov. Thank you, Harry.